Welcome. And today we have a very special presentation with two of our newest ministers. That would be Sally Bartolameolli and B. Friend. Take it away.
Okay, sorry, I had to find my unmute button there. So Sally and I are going to talk to you all about what I call peer support and counseling. And I think what Sally would call peer counseling. You'll see why we might call it two different things in a minute. And so just a real brief history from my perspective, and then Sally's going to share what she's learned as well. There is a counseling style called RC, or reevaluation counseling, and that started in the Seattle area with a Boeing employee that was unwell. He was having a mental I think breakdown, we might call it. Like he was, not able to work, and his peers were really concerned about him. And so they took turns going and sitting with him, and would see him going through these different physical reactions and mental reactions. And from that, they developed what they call reevaluation counseling. And it's being there to just witness each other with dedicated and as Sally would put it, delighted attention, so that the person can kind of do their own mental unraveling is what I would call it. And they learned a lot of these different techniques. And so then they created a community where they would support each other with these techniques. And so I'm going to let Sally talk about what she learned about the origins of RC.
Well, I just learned something about the origins of RC. So
you did? What did you learn?
Well, I didn't know that story. So
okay.
Yeah. So I in 1985 or 86, when I got involved in 12-step recovery, the father of my daughter actually in this program introduced me to a couple, and this couple was doing what they called peer counseling, and they were doing it professionally. And so what we did, I took a class with them, and they did an introduction, and basically they were involved in RC, reevaluation counseling. That was the lineage of their work. But there were certain agreements that if you were in that community, you needed to make. I will also say that there were rumors of sexual abuse by the male leader, which I believe is true because I knew someone who knew him. Mm-hmm. So there was some abuse of power, and they had their own lineage, which took some of the basics. It took what they liked and left the rest, right?
Are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is someone asking a question? Oh, okay. So basically, one of the whole kind of general theory is, on the first night, we learned oppression theory, which means that if you are a human being walking the planet, you have been hurt because you belong in a particular category. If you are and of course, this was when you identified as man or woman. This was 35 years ago. So if you identified as a woman, there was certain conditioning that you got that was hurtful, right? If you were a child, all children, and they used to say, we've all been hurt as children, right? Big boys don't cry, little girls should be nice and pretty, whatever the conditioning is, it's a hurt that we carry. It's a conditioning that we carry. And the way to return to what we called our inherent reality. Every human being is kind, cooperative, brilliant, creative. And we have the desire to be together with each other and work together in our brilliance and in our creativity. And what gets in the way of that are these hurts that we are carrying in our body. And the way to get back to that inherent reality is to what we called discharge. Could be release. You know, I have sat with a client who's shaking, which is the release of fear. We had pillows and big bats, so you had a place to ritualize your anger, so there were no real life consequences, but you were able to get that pain out, because our issues live in our tissues, is what we knew. And that was like 30 years ago. And we had a belief that the more you released and discharged around any hurt that you're carrying, your brain will be rewired. Well, has anybody ever heard of EMDR? I mean, we knew back then that the way to heal and to rewire and reframe our thinking was through release and discharge. So now apparently scientists have caught up with us. But so that was the basic theory. So when we got together, we practiced creating safety, right? And giving people the ability to go deep in their hurt. And then we supported each other. B, you're muted.
Thanks. Thanks, Sally. When I learned it from a woman named Terry, and she had gotten this lineage of teaching from a woman named Wahaba Hartson. I love that. It was in the Eugene area in Oregon here. And so if you know Eugene, it's very hippie, which I love. And Wahaba had gone through RC, as they call it, and also was like, I don't like some of the things that I learned from that, but I like a lot of what I learned from it. And she developed what she called holistic peer counseling. And so she was great. And I love reading what she wrote through the gift that Terry gave me, because she was like, take what works for you and leave the rest. And if you go through this a few times and you find that you want to pass it on, if you don't want to do it exactly like Wahaba have written it, like you want to add to it, do that and call it another name, but keep the spirit of it. And I really, really love that. And so, I did take this class multiple times up in Seattle, and I assisted with teaching it and co-taught it. And I'm really happy to just present the ideas of it today and see if anyone might be, interested in learning this. And another part of the tradition that came from RC all the way through is that this is, when you do the actual counseling and support sessions with each other, it's free. Like I paid for the class to learn how to do this, but instead of like having to pay a therapist, you can use these tools with your peers to help each other. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's taking the place of a therapist. I'm not saying that. If you want to have therapy, I'm fully supportive. I have done my fair share, and all the other help that we all like to get. But this is a great way to be in service to each other in a mutually beneficial, respectful, consensual way. So yeah.
And interestingly enough, so we've got the fundamental theory and the fundamental practices and ideas from reevaluation counseling. Mm-hmm. And I worked both. I had some individuals that I would meet with to do peer counseling, but Judy and Michael Vaughn had a place called Loving Well Institute. And we actually saw clients and talked, and we actually got paid for sessions with them. So that was very much against the original RC, theory. So we did both. We were paid and we shared the theory with each other.
Nice, nice. And just to share, I also did take an actual RC class here in Portland, which was really interesting. And it was really interesting also to witness the puritanical roots showing themselves. Through that, they were really hung up about sex and sexuality, and it kind of freaked them out. And yeah, that definitely wasn't a good fit long term, but I loved being able to go back to that original material and see how much of the original material and concepts were still there in the root of what I had learned previously in Seattle too. So yeah, interesting stuff. So we're also going to talk a little bit about what are the benefits of peer support and counseling that you guys could experience. So I wanted to start with talking about how within the ministry here, I saw that this could be a benefit. So as we go out and work with people in the world, whether it's casually or more formally, you know, we need to fill our own cups before we have that energy to then pour over into other people. And so this is a way that we can support ourselves and get what we need to then go out and be more present and have more energy to be there for other people, whether it, again, formally or informally, whether it's, you know, you're being more present with your best friend, your family members, or someone that you're working with, you know, in a ministry. And this also can allow people to gain better communication skills, understanding of each other and where people might be coming from, learn good listening skills that could be helpful in a ministry and working with people, and gain better understanding and experience with identifying and communicating around boundaries and roles with each other. So, and then Sally, I would love to have you chime in with some of the benefits that you've experienced.
Chime. So what I'd like to do now, just as so one of the things in our peer counseling community with Judy and Michael Vaughn is we sat on the floor in a circle. There was a flip chart. We spoke, we passed something. So everybody had an opportunity to speak or pass, it's choice, but you pass something very intentionally. And one of the things that we talked about is how we learn differently. So for me, we've been talking for 15 minutes. That is kind of, it's a little close to my limit. So I'd like to include you all in an opportunity, and I'm going to hold some accountability with time. But the question is, in this basic theory, we are all kind, cooperative, good, brilliant. We come into the world that way. We get hurt. And without the ability to release that hurt in whatever way that looks like, in a unconditional, delightful, someone holding space, or even a child. I remember in that first class, Michael had this cartoon. And in the first frame was this little boy who had fallen down. He had this big mark on his leg, and then he's running home and he's just trying to get to his mother, and he opens the door, and the minute he opens the door, he just bursts into tears, right? So we need safety in order to release and heal. So with that, this inherent reality, this we all get hurt, this, if we can just have a space where we can release, we can go back to that original inherent reality. I'd like to hear if any of that resonates, or if you have a question about it, or if you've ever heard of RC. So I'd like to go around, and I'm just, for time's sake, I'm going to call on you if that's okay. May I? If we were in a circle, we'd go around and around. So we're going to start. Kevin, is there anything that resonates with you? And you will have each about a minute or a minute and a half, which is longer than you think.
I've never heard of Barcy in general, but you know, I've been involved with peer counseling for almost 40 years. So I've seen the benefit of it, because peer counseling tends to be not perceived as non-judgmental, and is coming from your peers. So you tend to have less guardrails against help. You're more apt to accept the help from someone you know or who's on the same level with you.
Thank you. So it sounds like you hadn't heard of reevaluation counseling, but you've heard the term peer counseling, which the benefit of for you is that as peers, we sometimes feel safer and maybe can go deeper in our healing. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, good.
And
Thank
you
you.
see, I was involved in circles where we had to have the strictest confidentiality and all that kind of thing. So we had to create a safe space for the people we were dealing with.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, and in RC, we always had guidelines in the beginning, but since we're just giving an overview, we didn't go through the guidelines, which I agree are a really important part of creating safety. Hey, Laura, is there anything that resonates with you or that's familiar for you with this teaching?
Yeah, yeah. I used to belong to a co-counseling group.
Yeah,
It
same
was
thing.
basically the same thing.
It is.
We'd pair off with someone and we'd set boundaries and we'd do role play and yeah. And I was one of their first casualties because they taught us that how we could pound on pillows to get rid of our anger. Well, I chose a round pillow and it rolled away and I hit the floor with my fist and broke my fingers.
That was a painful learning, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it felt good.
The anger release feels good. So the value you experienced was just being able to release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say that was valuable about your experience with it?
Well, and I too have been in a 12-step program for almost 40 years. So that's a place where I feel safe to talk and cry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you related to that. Thank you, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie, do you have any experience? I'm just kind of following the screen here. Do you have any experience with peer counseling or co-counseling or RC where you hold space to release for each other? You're muted, but I see your lips moving.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. There's a little
Okay,
bit of
yeah.
static, but it's okay. We can hear you.
I had issues with my Zoom today, so anyway. RC, yeah. For me, RC was Royal Crown Cola growing up, and that's what I know about RC. But yeah, throughout my years, I've been involved in all kinds of counseling, and sounds like the foundation of what you're saying is a non-judgmental, supportive way of encouraging people to express their hurts. What I've discovered over the years, the hurts can come from a lot of different places, even past lives. So, so the skill set of the group or of the leader to some of the counseling groups I've been into were I left. There were group processes, and the group processes they take you through a dynamic experience, and in some places I wasn't through when they took us out of the processes, so I had a lot to process out that I was left stranded with, and unfortunately I had the tools and friends to help me.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm sorry, I'm going to move on so we can have equal time for everybody.
Perfect.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and so there's a lot of information you're not getting about the boundaries around peer counseling that make it important that people can feel complete, because we without those boundaries and the empowerment of consensuality, people can get hurt and left with their pain. Hi, Carrie. I don't know if you were here for the presentation. I wonder if anything about this inherent reality that we're all come into the world kind of in this perfection, and then we get hurt and then we support each other, if you're familiar with it or anything resonates or what you'd like to say.
Hi. I hadn't heard of it in this with that title. We did a lot of this with the priestess processes, the priestess circles I went through with Anya and then Lisa Michaels. It was 3 different circles. And also it fits very nicely with some of the original writing circles I was in when I traveled, and where I continue to use it is with other writers when we get together, because there are things that we understand about each other that other people don't. And it's actually the same with running. It's two things that overlap very nicely. Is there things that we understand that are almost impossible to explain. So having that safe space in a group of writers or a group of runners, whether it's in Zoom or in person, is very important. You know, just you feel like, oh, I'm not the only one, which is a huge deal. So that it definitely makes sense to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're all hurt. I certainly believe we're all wounded. Hey, Paula, was there anything that resonated with you that you'd like to speak to or add?
Well, I've been in and out of counseling for about 30 or 40 years. I never seem to quit. And we did have some peer counseling with some excellent leaders. But what jumped out at me when you were first talking was everybody learns differently. And I actually, when I was learning to be a post-secondary school teacher, I had a whole class on how each student learned differently, which I think I inherently knew, but it was nice to get the validation because some people like to listen, some people like to do hands-on stuff, some people need to write. So I think that's in a peer group, that's the important things for everybody to let everybody know how they learn. Because my style of learning is totally different than yours and totally different than Laura's and Sally's. So if we can't communicate by letting each other know how we learn, we're not going to learn from each other. So that's what's important to me right now.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, I taught brain hemisphericity and different learning styles as well. And we talk about learning distress in peer counseling. We did how we got hurt in a classroom situation that was structured in a particular way. We even talked about the way we get hurt there. So yeah. Sally, was anything resonant with you that you'd like to say or add to the conversation? You're muted too.
There. Can you
There
hear
you
me now? Okay. Put my glasses on so I can hear. I have heard of RC. I have never taken any counseling sessions or done anything with it, but back in 2000, I joined a women's circle, a spiritual circle, and I would have to say that was about as close as I could come to a counseling experience, in that sacred space was created and maintained by the facilitator and others. And we did a lot of self-exploration in a safe space. And the presentations were structured so that we were sort of guided over a period of time through different ways of looking at ourselves and our lives and the world around us. And I gained a great deal of personal information from that. It was very gentle. It was just right for my way of learning. And we were able to discuss with one another the things we were learning through these different presentations and experiences. So I would have to say that it's a very valuable process, no matter how it's structured. In some, it's a course. In some, it's a circle. In some, it's, so I feel like I learned an awful lot. I would highly recommend it if someone, and I think we all are searching for who we really are inside and how we relate to the world. So I would highly recommend any form that suits you.
Thank you. I heard you mention the word safety, which is really important. And there's also a term we learned of, I've been oppressed as a woman in a certain way, right? I'm supposed to be nice. I'm supposed to look nice. How I look and be nice is how a woman is valued. And we also learned about how to really acknowledge a woman's thinking and brilliance, right? So we learned how to contradict the oppression. And we also looked at how did we internalize that? How does my value as a woman only show up if I feel like I'm pretty and young, whatever the conditioning is? So it's very informative. I agree, very, very informative. Nikki, what would you like? Is there anything you'd like to contribute, and what resonated with you or what your experience is?
Yeah, thanks. I really resonate with all of it. And I agree, safety first. You have to establish those boundaries and set the, intention. I've been through the Life Force program, which is very similar to Landmark Forum. And beyond that, I went through all these Tantra practitioners in Sedona and Hawaii. So lots of exposure to emotional release and hand screams and pillow pounding, like you were talking about, shouting into the empty canyons, that sort of thing, just to get out, get the energy out of it. But most recently, I did a practice with the Shamanic Academy, and we were doing clearing conversations. And so we learned how to have a conversation with somebody in a safe space by setting the boundary ahead of time, saying, I'm going to say some things that are triggering, but I intend to do like this sandwich effect. I'll say something positive. I'll tell you what my critique is, and then I'm going to end with something positive, and just know that I feel like, we can end this in a good way. And when you agree to that, and then you expose yourself and you confront, which is what a lot of us avoid, it's almost liberating when you finally agree to walk away in friendship. And so that was probably the most powerful thing recently that we've done.
Yeah. So your exposure to a peer counseling or co-counseling or healing environment was learning some real specific techniques in communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the word communication is commune. It's like to move into someone. So when you can hold that with a particular intention and develop some skills for communicating, that can be a beautiful initiation into intimacy. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to hand it back to B.
Thank you. It was really great to hear kind of the experience that everyone has with all of this. Now, I think Bobby might be lurking around in the background. I just want to make sure if she wanted to, but she's not on camera. So just, okay, she's not there. That's good. Okay. So now I'm going to go over just a few of the concepts of like the basics of peer counseling, and Sally's already kind of touched on some of these. So in this process, we learn not only, how to create safety with each other and that safe container, and to do it consensually. We also learn theories about like how we process information. So without trauma, our mind is able to respond to new situations in fresh and appropriate ways. We evaluate information, we process it, we sort it, and we file away that information in our brains for later use. Now, when trauma happens or hurt happens, the charge from that could be released immediately or very soon after the event. And it could be done in a way that's very full, and it would release all that charge. And so the information that is then stored in your brain after that is sorted in a normal way, and it's easily accessible for you to use that experience later for your life. Now, there are times when trauma happens and a full release of that trauma isn't able to happen for different reasons. And that's when it gets stuck, it gets stored in the body in weird ways. Our mind can't sort it and catalog it in the best way for us to use it later. It can go into unconscious places. It just basically gums up the works of things. They get stuck, things can get conflated, and we don't necessarily always understand that this is happening in the moment. And so later on, when we experience something in a different situation, those things that are stuck and you know, not sorted quite well in our brains can come up and we don't even realize it, and we're triggered. We all know this word, we're triggered by something, or we've all experienced situations where, wow, that really stressed me out and I don't know exactly why. And often it can go back to an original hurt or trauma that we're connecting it to consciously or unconsciously. And so,
can I say something real quick? In peer counseling, we call that re-stimulated. We're in a situation where someone looks like my mother. It can happen consciously or unconsciously, or we're in a situation with groups. And we, you know, I grew up in a big Italian tribe. So in a group, like I'm on, you know, so there's something, if we really believe that we naturally feel kind, cooperative, and loving toward all human beings, and all of a sudden, right, it's an old hurt that's gotten triggered and re-stimulated, and the distress recording is running.
absolutely, absolutely. And those, you know, learned patterns or behaviors from that we created when we had those traumas, and we created them as like safety mechanisms on how we dealt with that at the time. But it was that tape that we played that, like, you know, didn't let it release all the way. Then we can see those patterns resurface and replay, and we, again, consciously or unconsciously, may not even understand or recognize them. So this is a chance to help us to see those and untangle them, and let ourselves, we learn techniques on how to let ourselves let that go. Like Nikki mentioned earlier, like screaming into a pillow, and Laura mentioned earlier about like hitting a pillow. You know, those are just some of the things, and there's a lot more that we can learn. And so, you know, with this, we know that with positive, solid, focused, loving attention to these past traumas and hurts, we can get a chance to unstick these things and release them. And peer counseling and support is a way to learn those things and then support each other on an ongoing basis in a community where we've learned how to create safety for each other. We've learned how to create safety in that container, and then we can do time trades to do that work and support each other in that way. And I'm going to hand it to Sally to add on to anything I've just said just now.
Oh, okay, great. So one of the values is when you have it's like you have a regular 12-step meeting, you're going to go to a regular session, you're going to go to, or you're meeting with some friends to walk at the end of the week. It's like we have this term called, you can put it on hold. So I'm out in the world and I'm triggered, and I want to, you know, really, I'm like feeling little, I get diminished, or I'm angry and I want to rage. So if I know I have a place to go, right, where I can release that and go deeply into it and have delighted attention just helping me to release, I can put it on hold. That's one of the benefits. We can put something on hold. And the more that we release our hurts or those distress recordings that we have, the more what we call free attention, the ability to think creatively, the ability to find a loving, kind, and cooperative solution. So that's another benefit. It also, you know, I don't know if we talked about this in peer counseling when I learned it, but certainly in shadow work, when we hide parts of ourselves or hold these distress recordings and these old beliefs, they're stored in our body, they're stored in our brain. It takes energy away from us. You know, it takes something to hold all that stuff in. So that's a benefit. There's a way to break the secrets, right? If we're carrying wounds and we're carrying pain and we're carrying secrets, we have a place where we can break those secrets. And what's received is delighted attention. So there's many, many, many values to the experience. And I keep thinking, there was a little girl, her name was Alexandra, and she and my daughter, I'll just tell you this story. She was 8 or 9, 10 years old. And I don't know, I picked them up from Girl Scouts at their school, and they were sitting in the back seat, and I could see Alex, and she had this face, and she was looking like she was angry. And I said, Alex, honey, are you okay? You look like you're angry. And she said, I am angry. And she kind of looked at me like, okay, is this adult going to give? What's this adult going to do? And I said, you know what? We get angry a lot too. Hannah and I do. So we've learned how to have a really good temper tantrum. And sometimes we just have a temper tantrum. And I rolled up the windows and we pulled around the corner. And I said, sometimes we just go, I'm so angry. And Hannah said, yeah, I do that too. And Hannah did it. And Alex did it, and dropped her off at home. And I said, before I did, I said, sometimes I just go in my bedroom and I scream in a pillow and it really helps me. And I try to come from way down deep here so I don't hurt my throat, and gave her everything I could in a ride home. It was about 10 years later. She was 20, because I remember my daughter was still in college, and I ran into her at Whole Foods, got Whole Foods everywhere. And she said, Miss Sally. And I said, Alex, is that you? And she said, yes. She said, you know what? She said, I think you saved my college career. I'm like, what, honey? She said, I was at St. Edward's in Austin, and I didn't know what to do. And you came to mind, and I went in my closet and I screamed in a pillow. And whenever I get really upset, that's what I do. And it has saved me, Miss Sally. I'm so grateful for that. Now, who knew that? And we all have, expressions that need to be validated, if only to be witnessed, that make a difference. That say it's okay to be angry. We just don't hurt ourselves or other people. Yeah, we all get hurt in this world. Let's let our body, like animals do, just shake it out, or whatever, tears, whatever it is. So that, I didn't realize how powerful that was until I ran into her. And it's just a story I tell grandmothers and aunts, so more benefit.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah. So, with this system of supporting each other, we understand that when people get that amazing, dedicated feeling about a listener, that sometimes we can also project onto them. And so this is one of the things. So there's, benefits we've talked about from this. And then there's also, like, in how I learned it, we learn some of the things to watch out for as well. So, like, if somebody's giving you this amazing attention and, you're doing these trades, you can think, wow, like, this is such a good friend of mine. And in RC, they're very strict. You don't, like, change your relationship with your RC peer support people.
No social relationships are personal at all.
Yeah. So, whatever relationship you came in, that's the one that you stay at, that as long as you are, in that RC. Now, Wahaba, that's one of the things that she didn't like. And so she was like, that's just not reality. Like, we're in this community together. We tend to start to grow close with each other. And so in the lineage that I learned these techniques, like, we were asked to not change our relationships during the class. So it's like a series class. But afterwards, we know that when people go out and they start just, doing these one-on-one without the class structure, that sometimes these relationships do change. And so we just were given some tools on how to, like, look at that and acknowledge it and understand it and do it consciously. So you can, shift if that's what you both really want to, but in a conscious way, so that you can avoid the pitfalls of the assumptions of how a relationship is shifting and growing. And then I think Sally had a little bit of a different experience with this, with her lineage.
Yeah, so my people didn't like that either. And not only did they not like it, but they really didn't have very good boundaries at all. So you can have too rigid, you can have none at all, and people get hurt. But And there's I could tell you lots of stories about people got hurt in that community. And, we get hurt. I mean, we get hurt, and we do the best we can to have boundaries and to create safety. And, as human beings, we get hurt. So, I'm not sure what else to say about that. I don't think we're new, young, little buds just learning in the world. We've probably all been hurt, right, in communities and in relationships with other people. So I think the value is knowing that hurt is inside of me, and if I can release it, I can restore myself to this inherent nature that I think we all want to be restored to. And we're human beings and we hurt each other. So it's like this paradox. There wasn't much paradox back then. There was, this is the way to heal. So,
Yeah.
So
the reason that we wanted to bring this is that I was talking with Paula, and her idea to, get back to education and healing. And this is an amazing tool for education and healing and support. And so this community, if people are interested, we could have, a series of classes to help people learn and understand these. And the reason I thought it would be helpful for this community, many of us are ministers and go out and work with people in the world in different ways, even if it's not in our ministry work. And again, we can use this to support each other as we move through and navigate our world. We can fill our own cup before we go on and help those other people. And I also thought, in the lineage that I worked with, we did learn about identifying roles and boundaries and good ways to navigate the shifts in those. And that can happen in our ministry work as well, and other work that we do. And so I just really saw the benefits of that. So I wanted to see if anybody else had ever experienced times where like roles and relating with people had some messiness, some confusion to it. Anybody who has any experience like that, let's Sally, do you have a timer? Like maybe give like, a minute. And
I do.
Yeah. So anybody have any
I will
experience?
be the timing goddess.
Thank you,
Enlighten me.
Sally.
Yeah.
Anybody have any experience with those messy connections? Like when you're in this role and then you're really giving good attention to this person, and then they think it means this, but maybe it's not, or it started as this and it went on to something different. Nikki, you're nodding your head, so I'm gonna call on you.
Yeah, in the work situation, we have this new idea that decentralized governance is about to happen so that the community starts to make decisions together. And so we're practicing. And so we've been in this community where there's some leadership to kind of keep the core team together, but then people come and go when we do a project. And so in many cases, what we did was we said, okay, we're going to build this entity called Exo Angels. It's those of us trying to do good in the world. We attract these people who want to do a certain project together. And so we do that. And then they go off and they create something that we were also saying was generation 2. So we did product number 2 and said, okay, the team can come together in whatever form it looks like. But 3 of the team members split off and went and made their own thing, the same thing. And it's like, I felt at the time, it's like, well, wait a minute, you just used us to take our resources and run with it on your own when you agreed to be with us. And so having those conversations, those clearing conversations to get back to a place where, yes, I can still coexist with you, even though you did that thing, which I felt was out of integrity.
Yeah. And so when we have a community that we do peer counseling support with, that is something that you can bring into those sessions with somebody and do a lot of your own clearing work on that, and then be able to go back to interacting with those people that broke those agreements
Yeah.
with better attention and focus and more openness.
Yeah. And sometimes
Yeah.
they feel even closer to you because we had that conversation. So then they're more beholden to what their word was. It was
Yeah.
kind of interesting, the flip.
I love,
Yeah.
if I can add, I love B's question about when did this get messy? And it feels like you added, Nikki. Here was the solution for us. It was some communication. So I wonder if anybody who also wants to share about some messiness, what they learned from that and what seemed to be the solution. And if you're still looking for a solution, that's okay too. We're
Carrie.
here.
I will certainly, I've been in, well, specifically the first writing group I was in. It's so vital to have a facilitator who will set and hold those boundaries and not let it turn into attacks. Or if the facilitator themselves they're not in a good place, to avoid things like jealousy and then attack themselves. That is just vital. It's crucial. And sadly, in that situation, the lesson was, oh, I've got to get out of this. I can't be involved in this because I'm spending so much energy trying to recover from the attacks of this specific facilitator. It was, she thrived on drama and didn't mind a bit to create it. And that was just not helpful. It was just draining and exhausting. So that's a huge thing for me, is being able to keep your own drama out of it if you're the facilitator, and be able to hold your own boundaries. And, sometimes you have to say, okay, stop, this is not okay. And more healthful circles can be so good. But yeah, that's something to be aware of on both sides of the equation.
Absolutely, Carrie. And one of the great things from the teachings that I had was we learned how to set and hold those boundaries with each other. So it's a decentralization. It is taking it away from a facilitator or a leader, and we're each learning those skills. Not only better understanding ourselves, better understanding and identifying other people's hurts, identifying how to create a safe container, and identifying how to hold space for each other to heal from these situations and support each other through them as well. So
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
And I love that sometimes the solution is to leave.
Valid.
If there's not boundaries in place and the ability to communicate in a clean and empowering way, leaving is sometimes a solution.
Yeah. Morning, Dolly. Welcome.
Good morning.
Just a really quick catch you up. We're talking about peer support and counseling today. We're just talking about this concept and talking about how if people are interested, we could do a series of classes around this, and it's learning techniques to help support each other, just moving through our lives, filling our own cup so we can be there more for each other. So that's where we're at right now. Yeah.
Charlie, to say something.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura.
Charlie,
Oh, Charlie.
you're muted again, Charlie.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There's 2 points I'd like to make.
Okay, Sally's timing you.
I've been in this community for like 40 years, and I felt I was harshly judged, and it was led by the president of the organization and supported by some others. And I did everything I could to discuss it and bring it out and air it, and nothing worked. So my choice was to leave the organization, which I did for, 4 or 5 months. The other point I'd like to make is that your idea about counseling is fine, and we need something to stimulate interest in our community. But certainly we would not be able to record it. It would have to be very private and have to be probably at a different time. So I am concerned about the rapidly declining rate of population in churches throughout the United States. And our community doesn't seem to have grown. And I'm at a loss to know what it would take to stimulate interest.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah. So the idea of this, if people are interested, is anyone who's interested, we could do a series of classes that are specifically teaching people about these techniques. And then at the end of that class is the start of a community that has these techniques where they can hold space for each other. And many of you have already learned a lot of these techniques from these other experiences that you've had in your life. And the beautiful thing that I like about what Wahaba had written, like, you know, take what works for you, leave what you doesn't work for you. That is something vital to remember in all this. And also, we can bring from other teachings these techniques and add them in to our peer support sessions that we have with each other. And one of the thoughts that I had with this is that once the basics of these are learned through that class that could happen, the series of classes, is that we could also start to look at how we can use these for what I might call like spiritual counseling with people that we do work with in ministry work and in other areas of our life where you can see the benefits of these things. But very much so, like, being there for each other. And yes, Charlie, it would not be during the Sunday services. It would definitely be a separate thing, its own thing, if people are interested. And we could do it via Zoom, and we would, you know, structure it, and it would not be recorded. It would be in its own container if people are interested. Yeah.
So I'd like to move on, because one of the guidelines, which is when you do peer counseling, you share time, you do time so that everybody's voice is heard. That's a way in sharing time that you can have those people who don't usually speak, and those who speak a lot know that they're taking turns. It's a life practice to take turns. So Kevin hasn't, so we left at downfalls, and you know, be encouraged everybody to look at how you may have been hurt in a circle and what you learned from that. So Carrie talked about holding boundaries, and even in our peer counseling community, leadership was good, because when peers are learning, to have leaders hold that accountability was good. Nikki said communication was valuable. You know, I mentioned, and Charlie mentioned, sometimes you do your part and you choose to leave. So Laura, so Kevin, Laura, Sally, Dolly, if you feel like you've been here long enough to understand what's going on, you're welcome to contribute. And Bobby, if you have anything to contribute, those people, have you ever been hurt in a circle? And what did you learn from that might be applied to another circle? And we got to move with alacrity, quickness, and ease.
Or did you ever have relations that started as one thing and shifted to another unconsciously, and there was messiness with that?
What did you learn from that, if anything?
Well, I'll start first, and I'll keep it brief. One of the key issues that would pop up especially at the start of the AIDS crisis, is the fact that you had such a small community of support, and there was dating that wanted to take place during the event. So on a micro level, we determined what was a safe way to enter into this relationship, that it was a healthy relationship and not a relationship of exploitation or whatever. But as a result, the wonderful thing that came out of that, once we established it on a micro level, we were then able to expand it and hold community forums on healthy relationships. So it turned out our HIV outreach outreach went into the broader community, and the entire community had the chance to learn what is healthy and within boundaries and whatever.
Thank you, Kevin. So more education and communication, it sounds like. Sally, Bobby, Laura. Paula, did you contribute? Am I getting everybody who hasn't spoken? You're welcome to speak now.
I think support is probably one of the more important things in any community. If you do have a leader, people should support the leader as much as they can. But supporting each other is even more important. Being there for each other, being available, but again, within boundaries. Boundaries are difficult. I break mine quite regularly. And I think without boundaries, you have chaos. And chaos is never a good thing. So I think learning boundaries and how to set them and how to maintain them would be wonderful. Even at my age, I still need to learn that. So I think these classes would be a great idea for our ministry. Again, I agree with they cannot be public property. They have to be just within us. But if you two would be willing to do that, I vote that we go for that. And you guys set up a program and everybody can sign up or list wherever they want to be, when they want to be. And you guys get to pick the day that's convenient for you.
Thank you, Paula. Is it Sally, Laura, and Dolly that haven't spoken?
No, I spoke.
You did. What was your, would you tell me what you said again? Because I didn't write it down. About boundaries or
Safe space.
safety? Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a safe space in which to go within and learn.
Good.
And
Thank
the structured presentations. It wasn't just a bitch session. There was a
Yeah.
program for every time we met.
Boundaries again.
Yeah.
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 That's definitely
well,
part of the teaching.
structure, I think, more than anything. Structures, presentation structure and safety. And then
Yeah.
within those parameters, we got a lot done.
So people know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. That's part of safety too.
Yeah.
Laura?
Absolutely.
Yeah, quickly, I've learned a lot from 12-step programs. Sally, you'll know what I'm talking about. I had a home group for many, many years, and then all of a sudden some new people came in and everything changed, and one by one people left, and so then there I was having to find a new group, and that's when I found Sally and Paula in the women's circles, and so that sort of took the place of that. But what I learned is everything changes, and we have to get used to that. I hate change, but everything changes, and we never stop learning.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Dolly, do you feel like you've been here enough to know what the conversation is and whatever
I
you'd like to say?
I don't. I feel like I just got in the middle of this, and so I just want to sit and listen, and then I can give my input.
Great. Great. I want to take this second to just really clarify again. So I'm willing, and Sally can speak for herself, but I think you're down, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I am interested in offering this as a class. And so once people take this series of classes that presents this information, in the classes, we build on skills and these teachings, and we practice how to hold this space for each other. And then after the class is done, we will have some new tools on how to do peer support for each other on an ongoing basis. I know people who have found a peer counseling buddy, and they've done it for years together. And so it's just going to add to our tools, again, how we can fill our own cups, be supported work on our own healing in a safe space with safe boundaries with each other, and then go out and do more good work with people in the world.
Sounds good.
Yay. Thank you, B, and thank you, everybody.
Yeah. So I would like to ask if anybody is interested in this series of classes. Laura, thank
definitely-
you.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Paula,
I would
great.
Yeah.
I would be.
Sally,
I
okay.
will.
Dolly, great. Did you raise your hand, Nikki? Awesome. Okay, great.
Yeah, I think taking
Um,
these classes would make us far more effective in helping to heal
And
folks out.
I think it will help build the ministry in
Mhm.
a roundabout
I
way.
think you should have the boundaries written out for people to see it in chat or something.
Well, that's we discuss at length in our first class boundaries and how it works. And so that's something that gets built also on top of that first class at each class. We reinforce that. So
Yeah, because people come in and out of class.
yeah, no, so
Things
this would be a series that like we would want people to say, okay, yes, and we would find the best time for everyone to be able to participate. And then if somebody missed a class, then I would definitely be willing to work with them to cover the material so that they can catch up and then come back to that next class. But it's not free for all. You don't get to just like come to one or two of them. Like it's a whole thing to learn, and there's a lot to learn, so that can be safe space that you're holding for each other on an ongoing basis. This was just an intro to the concept today.
So it's a commitment.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
commitment for a period of time, 6,
Yeah.
7, 8 weeks.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Sounds
then you
good.
have your voluntary commitments with each other after that, where you can
If you
have those
choose, yeah.
ongoing relationships. Yeah. And that's up to you guys, you know, who you want to have as your peer support buddy after that, and how that works. And yeah. And then, you know, if you have other people in your life that are interested, you know, then there could be another class after that for other people to join in and learn those skills, and then expand that in your world as well. That's just an option. So
Sorry to go over everybody. That's a thing about when I was trained. You start on time, you end on.
Respect everybody's schedules.
yeah.
I would
Okay.
also be interested, just the dogs have been fussing, so I wasn't able.
Got
So
it.
yes, I'd be interested as well.
Yeah. Kevin, are you interested? And
Yeah,
it's
I
fine if you're- yes,
raised my
okay, great,
hand. Yeah.
great. Charlie, are you interested in the class at all?
I'm neutral.
Okay. Well, you're welcome to try it out. I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
And then if it's not for you, you don't have to keep coming. And that's
Okay.
fine too.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but I don't know if I'll be teaching, but I need to leave. I was
Okay.
committed until 12 noon, you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
for your
you. It was a wonderful
participation.
class.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Session.
you.
Yeah.
All right. So
All
we
right.
do you need to end B, or can we talk
No,
about?
I'm good. Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next week's topic, it really helps me to have it ahead of time because I didn't get the title. So it was like, I didn't
That's
know
my
what
bad.
to say. I'm not accusing, I'm just saying it
Yep.
helps for all of us to be in the loop
Yep.
by having
You
something
have
a week
boundaries, sister. You go for it. Have some
Yes.
boundaries.
So what is the title for next week?
That's what I'm asking. Anybody have anything they want? We don't have a scheduled speaker, so we're
Well,
open
it is
to anything.
Father's Day.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that. What do you want to call it? The father's role in community, family, society?
Sacred masculine versus
Sacred
wounded
masculine.
masculine is a good.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Okay,
good
sacred
one.
masculine subtitle.
Something with a positive masculinity as opposed to toxic masculinity.
Okay,
Perhaps.
Who's
I
who's
think
teaching?
something that's really overlooked is that the feminine movement for women to be heard are using the masculine aspect of themselves. to find the masculine power in themselves to express more feminine rights.
I found
I
that
think-
that was very true in the 80s and 90s. When I was in corporate America, I had to be male to succeed. But I think it's changing and shifting, and I think we're finding that balance, and now we're trying to navigate where we can both be.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a feminine and masculine aspect in all of us. And
Yes.
what I'm saying is the masculine aspect is the will of God. It's what we need to say and put into practice. It sets this, and the feminine aspect of God is the creative medium. So without the balance of the two, you don't have anything. But what I'm saying is that for anybody to have their voice heard, they have to pull on the will. They have to express the divine will, which is the masculine aspect of deity that resides in all of us. I think that's overlooked.
Okay, that's interesting.
I
Read
think
that.
I just want to point out that is a way of looking at the world. It is a valid way. And there are like lexicons, like there are like terms and terminology that we learn in different teachings that we acquire in our life. And the same kind of concept can be said in different ways. And so I do think
Exactly.
that's a valid point in what you've learned. There's like the masculine and feminine self, and I can understand those too. And I'm just going to honor that there are other teachings in the world that would not necessarily call them feminine and masculine. But I get what you're saying. Mhm.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. I'll have Chat GPT give us some ideas for a tagline that's
Great.
neutral.
Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
Namaste.
you.
Have a great week.
Have a blessed week.
Love and hug.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Blessings to all.